Hi, my name is Robert Shelley with Chelle Law, and my law firm assists veterinarians with employment contract issues. Today I'm going to talk about veterinarian employment contract red flags. So let's say you are just coming out of training, or maybe you're even switching jobs and you have a new employment agreement. What are some things you need to think about as far as what could make an agreement maybe not such a great opportunity? So first, compensation, clearly, usually the number one thing in most people's minds. Now, with veterinarians, a lot of them will use the Sal Method, which involves a percentage of the net collections that are, the practice receives based upon your personally kind of, produced services. Or there's usually some kind of hybrid where you'll get a base plus a percentage of what the net collections are, but negative balances in that situation can be moved forward. So let's kind of dive into that quickly. So first, if you're a veterinary associate and you're moving into a practice, you need to think if it's not just a straight base salary, which many times it is. And so in that scenario, you get paid, a base amount, $100,000 a year. You work your normal hours and that's that. If it's some kind of collections-based method, your volume and how many clients you see and how much you do per day is going to directly affect how much money you make annually. And so you need to make certain that when you're looking at a job that, especially lately with kind of vet staffing at like difficult levels for nearly anyone in the industry, vet techs, front office staff are difficult to find at this point. And so I know plenty of vets who are struggling with volume simply because they're having to do things that a vet tech would do in addition to seeing all of the normal patients that they would. So looking at whether the practice is staffed appropriately and is efficient, which will allow you to be as efficient as possible and then be as productive as possible, monetarily, is important. You need to ask those hard questions. Have you had any problems with staffing lately? If you have, what are you doing to correct those problems? What's the average volume for the current veterinarians in the practice? Those questions are important. And even ask like hard numbers. What's the average net collections for a veterinarian in my specialty in this practice? That way you can kind of gauge what your ultimate compensation is going to be. If you're looking at an employer and they're unwilling to even give you moderate data as far as that's concerned, it's a huge red flag, because normally it means one, either they're so disorganized they don't know what the numbers are, or two, they're so bad they don't want the vet to know about them. So first red flag is making sure they're staffed appropriately, which will make you more efficient, which will ultimately, lead to more money for you. Second huge red flag, if there's no without cause termination in the agreement. So in almost any provider agreement across any industry, physicians, dentists, veterinarians, whoever, there needs to be some kind of without cause termination. And what that means is that either party can terminate the agreement at any time with a certain amount of notice to the other party. So if there is no without cause termination, so meaning let's say a vet signs a 3-year contract and then there's no way to terminate the contract early. Well, I find that the contracts that have no ability to terminate the agreement without cause usually means that that employer has had a very difficult time staffing and they're wanting to lock in vets under any circumstances. And if they have high turnover, they have trouble holding on to vets, it usually means they're kind of, I would say, bad business people, or maybe they treat the vets inappropriately or not with kind of the professionalism that they deserve. So you absolutely need without cause termination in the contract. Normally, it would be somewhere between 30 to 90 days. So if it's 180 days, a whole year notice, you can't accept that. It needs to be shorter just for that situation. And especially if you're being paid purely on production, and you have no way of getting out of the agreement, and your compensation is just completely nosedived, you are stuck. So unless you find some way that they've breached the contract, you need the ability to get out. And then the last kind of major red flag would be the restrictive covenants, so the non-solicit and the non-compete, more importantly. So non-competition clause is enforceable in most states. There are a few where it's not, but for the most part, non-competes are enforceable. And that basically says the vet can't act in their specialty for a period of time within a certain geographic radius. So normally a non-compete would be 1 to 2 years, somewhere around there. Obviously 1 would be more favorable. And then as far as the geographic restriction, kind of varies pretty wildly amongst location. In a rural environment, it might knock the vet completely out of the town. Whereas if you're in a big metropolitan area, it could be 5 miles, all the way up to 20. So you want to make sure those are, as tight as possible, meaning you want it only from one location or your primary location for the smallest radius possible. That way you don't have to necessarily move. Now, if you get a non-compete that's 5 years long and knocks you out of the 5 contiguous counties that you're in, that is not a reasonable non-compete, and you absolutely should not sign that. Now, for some people, they may move for a job and then have absolutely no intention of staying there if the contract ends. So for them, the non-compete doesn't matter at all. But if you have ties to an area, you have family in the area, your kids are going to school, there's like 0% chance you can move if the contract ends. You absolutely need to make sure that you have a reasonable non-compete so it doesn't completely affect your lifestyle for a year or 2 or however long it is. So those are 3 major red flags. Does it have without cause termination? Are they staffed appropriately so that your compensation isn't affected? And is the non-compete fair? There are a number of other red flags too, but I'm just going to focus on those 3 with this video. If you have any questions about your employment agreement, you can always call my law firm at the phone number listed below in the description, or you can reach us through our website, chellelaw.com. And hopefully this was helpful. Thanks.